turn our attention to entrepreneurship as a path to financial independence.
I actually don't think school teaches you enough on how to be an entrepreneur at all. If you have passion, it's what helps you to have the most resilience. And resilience is what's going to allow you to overcome any storm.
Welcome to the second episode of the Upworth Talks, the leading personal finance interview series with extraordinary characters brought to you for their inspiring stories and inspiring achievements. In a few words to start with, what is Upworth about? Upworth is the home of empowered individuals who want to take control of their money. It's basically a one-stop shop application where you can track, plan, and grow your wealth. You are virtually able to connect any asset and liability, think cryptocurrency, think bank accounts, think superannuation, and benefit from targeted alerts. For instance, we will tell you when you can at least save 10% on your mortgage. Pretty cool book. It's free, it's online, check it out. Before we start, and before I introduce my invitee in front of me here, I would like to make a small disclaimer that we have to make every time. Upworth does not provide financial advice, to be very clear, whether general or personal, and this podcast is solely intended for entertainment, we're going to have fun, and informative purpose. The views expressed in this section are strictly personal and should not be relied upon to make any financial decision. If you need financial advice, please seek professionals to get it. Today, we get now to the fun part, we turn our attention to entrepreneurship as a path to financial independence. From Steve Jobs to Jack Ma to Elon Musk, to name a few slightly famous people, our market-based society glamorizes the superhuman figure of the successful entrepreneur. The tale of the visionary founder defying the odds, winning, is possibly one of the most potent dream-making machines of our societies. But what does it actually take to be a successful entrepreneur? Is it for everyone? What are the dark sides of it? When does it become financially meaningful to be an entrepreneur, and under what conditions? I am Alex Chaboutier, founder and CEO of Upworth, and I am joined today to explore this fascinating topic by Geoffroy Henry, founder and CEO of Ofload. Thank you for having me. Very happy to have you. It's a great honor. We're going to get to you and present you a little bit. I've already talked a lot. So basically, you're founder and CEO of Ofload, which is Australia's leading road freight platform. Geoffroy, in a few words, I think you're possibly one of the most successful Australian entrepreneurs in recent times. You have been named among the 100 top young Australian entrepreneurs of the year. You grew your business from literally zero to almost 200 million revenue in about 3 years, and you went on raising 100 million from leading investment funds. By any standard, this is truly extraordinary, and thank you for having us, Geoffroy. It is a great honor, and welcome to our talk.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I mean, there's obviously far more successful entrepreneurs in Australia, but I'm super happy to be able to be part of those that get to execute their dream and get to grow a business. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let's get to it. What we like to do in this podcast is to start with a bit of personal background, your personal story. I'll share a little bit and I'll let you on to it. I think, Geoffroy, you epitomize the migrant success story, the Australian dream, so to speak. You are part of a family of 5 brothers. Let's worship your mother. And you partly grew up in Australia as a kid. If I'm not wrong, you decided to come back in 2030 and went on building one of the fastest growing companies in the country. Can you tell us more about your childhood, what got you there, and what is so special about Australia for you?
I mean, a lot there. So about my childhood, indeed, I lived a little bit in Australia. I was the son of an expatriate person, so we've traveled around the world. I lived in Canada, so it was a common thing to change every 4 years or so. And I indeed 4 brothers, which means that it was a very competitive environment. One with of course a lot of let's say energy at least, if not just chaos. And yeah, was born in that environment, super close to my entire family altogether. I think that's probably some of my best friends as well as my brothers, for sure. And yeah, leading to that, I mean, from the early stages of my life, I was an entrepreneur, though not a visionary. So I've always tried to do things. I remember even when I was 14 and we used to live in Montreal, I would like import fake goods. I know it's not great from China, and I would actually resell it to my friends at school. And I was always trying to find ways, or whether it's buying lights that you put on your rim for your bicycle. Like I've always loved business. I always loved like just the business aspect or entrepreneurship aspect of things. But I never knew how to go about it. So I dabbled at it for a long period of time, even before I was even a student. Came back to France after Montreal in 2008, started a business school in Paris, near Paris, in Cergy. And from there, I kind of went back on track and followed what was meant to be the safest road to make sure that I am employable and I am sexy on paper. So that one day maybe someone wants to trust me and pay me a lot of money to actually create a lot more value for them, which is interesting concept. And so I've done that. I've done a bit of private equity, first private equity internship. Then I moved in more hedge fund like hedge fund at Lixor, which is a subsidiary of Société Générale. In 2013, I've decided to come back to Australia, and you got today's absolutely spot on. And while coming back, I was like, okay, I'm sure I'm a kick-ass banker. I'm going to be amazing. So let me come to Australia, and I'll get a job super quickly and like so employable because I've done all the right thing.
You're pretty good at banking or finance. You raise a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully they've been better at it, and I'll create more value than I've invested. No, but like I've tried to do that, and it didn't work out, right? I didn't get the jobs I wanted. I wanted to go in trading and commodities, and that didn't happen for a couple of months. And I stumbled upon an opportunity at HelloFresh, and that was the first kind of startup environment. And the day I joined, it was so hands-on, so chaotic. Employee number 14 in Australia, high growth, well funded, and I got to by the age of like 23, 24 to manage dozens of people. So that was just a crazy journey. And I got hooked on the adrenaline of actually every day being a different day. No business as usual, just going through that. But I've reached the limit of being able to do it for someone else. So I've done that for about 3 years. Then I saw an opportunity in the market because obviously I knew what the food delivery business was, and I could see that there was a gap in the market in what the last mile component, literally the vans delivering food in your house. That piece of the puzzle was still analog, but still wasn't where it should be in order to better serve the clients. And so I've left HelloFresh and joined a logistic company where I was the co-owner and the general manager for that business, and worked alongside the owner to just push that. I sold that business. I got sold back to HelloFresh. Then I've done a couple of things. Then I've worked in an edtech startup. I was like, okay, I now know edtech because I've done that for 18 months. Let me start my own edtech business. And so I started a digital campus business, an app called Jumbe at the time, which I funded for my own money when I had the free staff at some point.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, I'm hemorrhaging. It's not working. So I need to stop. So I failed that business. And I started Ofload in March 2020.
Super interesting. So many things.
Yeah.
Trying to, but I think the really cool thing what you said is like it was not a linear journey, right? It was not like, okay, you woke up one morning, had an epiphany, like many people like to portray, like, okay, cool, I'm an entrepreneur today. It's sort of like the way you trace this back to your childhood, having some, stabs at it and like just in an intuitive manner. And then sort of like saying, well, okay, you said it yourself, like, okay, the safe path. Can you talk a little bit more about this? Because I think, many people will relate to this, feeling like, okay, look, it's not for me. Being an entrepreneur is just some things that I can't afford to do, or I'm not great enough. There's a lot of, self-censure on that part. Did you face this? How did you deal with it,
It's just like, I am absolutely not risk averse, but it's more that sometimes joining a structure that can offer a lot of what mature business can in terms of like the environment, in terms of culture, in terms of the fact that you're not alone, right? When you start a business, you're one man show to begin with, right? So it's super lonely. That is very reassuring, and I think that especially when you end a business school, what you've done through those years in business school is making yourself the most employable, making yourself know as many things as you should in order for a company to believe that you're the right fit for them. And so that changes the mentality. I actually don't think school teaches you enough on how to be an entrepreneur at all. They teach you how to be a great employee. And that's topic for sure. But I mean that it's so straightforward to try to become an employee then. And then you have different fields in terms of what is seen as successful when you end business school, whether you do consulting, I think you come from consulting, whether you do banking, but like you then try to be the A player in your field and go in those industries where usually it's super competitive. Thankfully, I had a own wake-up call in purpose in terms of what do I want to do. And also I had a reality check in not having the opportunity I wanted in the Australian market. So that forced me to reconsider and then truly say, okay, what do I want to do now? Like, what is best going to serve what is important to me? And the answer was definitely entrepreneurship.
Super interesting. So when you say like going to Australia, like in a way getting out of your comfort zone, expatriating yourself, force that awakening on you and help you, realize it's actually what you were meant to do, what you truly want to do, which you may not have done if you had stayed in France, let's say.
100%. And that was a really decision that was already clear to me when I booked the one-way ticket.
Yeah. Okay.
The fastest way for me to become what I want to become and to be able to get the life I want to have is to not to be burdened by how I'm looked or the circle I have, the circle of friends, my own family, and say, okay, well, if I would drop all of that, I can reinvent who I am and quickly get to that, rather than having to show people how I'm evolving and having their look and the way they look at me change and evolve slowly. Like, okay, now I'll build a new world and I will go and reinvent what tomorrow looks like.
Super cool. No, thanks for sharing. Yeah, Australia has a lot about it. It's definitely a country of migrants. Many people coming here, taking a chance, receiving a chance from Australia, I guess, like to do it, to try it. It's very much true and amazing to hear your story. Maybe as a sort of last question around this section, exploring your past and what got you there. Maybe it's a bit cheesy, but was there like a seminal person or influence in your life beyond this journey, which is very personal, that impacted your decision? Where you said like, look, yeah, truly this person was a role model, or that moment, that interaction sort of shaped the decision I took afterward?
Yeah, there was one person for sure, super close to me because it's my dad. But it was an interesting thing to witness within my teenage life, an adult actually trying to figure out their own life. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I thought adult had all the answers. And he was in banking, and then at some point he was like, well, no, that's not going to work out for me. I'm going to take a year off and I'm going to walk thousands of kilometers and do stage 2, I think, of the Everest and just do something intense in order to make sure that I align what I do with what is important to me. And sometimes when you're on the rail and you have kids and all of these things happen, you don't question things. You got to follow things in a certain way. So having witnessing an adult do that, I was like, whoa, maybe those questions are healthy. Maybe the timing is not to wait that you're 50. It's actually to do it when you're that young. And so that inspired me. And then there's something that I truly appreciate in the way I was brought up is there's no hierarchy in the function and the job you do. There's a hierarchy in how much you give of yourself when you do it. So whether you're picking up trash or you're cleaning offices or whether you're the fancy great partner in the most performing company, who cares as long as you actually try to be the best in what you do and you give 100% of yourself. So that's open doors. That allows you to say, actually, I could do anything and that is still okay. There's just not one way to define success. The way you define success is how you go about it. And so that opened a full horizon, and those two things combined made me land to where I landed.
Super cool. No, thanks for sharing. So it's very personal, the example of your dad, and like it's pretty cool to have that openness, I guess, and like that you also share his own question. It's not always the case, right? I mean, you may want to be sort of like this figure of perfection and everything. So no, super cool, very interesting example. Many people will say, yeah, my inspiration was Elon Musk, which is sort of like, okay, cool, man, So no, thanks for sharing. Really, really nice. Which maybe gets me a little bit to like the next segment, natural progression in this conversation we're having. If we talk a little bit about Offload itself, right? We talk about how you got there. Maybe to start with, like, can you tell us a bit more about Offload? Because I made like a one-line introduction. Many people wouldn't even know what it is about. They should. Can you explain a little bit what it is to us? And maybe as we do this, how did you pick the idea, right? Because many people, when they think about entrepreneurship, are like, first, it's very daunting. Well, impressed, intimidated. But the second thing is, I just don't know what to do. So if you can sort of walk us through that, would be amazing.
Yeah, I'll follow the order of your question.
Whichever you want.
So Offload in a super simplistic way is a data freight logistic company, software that tries to optimize freight movements across Australia, because we only are in Australia right now. And what does that mean? That means that we optimize trucks, we optimize pallets in such a way that we remove the inefficiency and the waste that exists in the market. Whether it's across operationally, making sure the trucks are full all the time, making sure they run to the right areas and know when to come back, or is leveraging the long tail, the 58,000 trucking companies that exist in the market. So we are a coordination piece. We sit in the middle between what is we call shippers whether it's Nestle, Lactalis, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, whoever you can think of, right? That moves freight around, everything you wear, the mic we can see, and so on, has been on a truck and a boat and so on. It's the third biggest industry in Australia. And then you have like all those dozens of thousands of trucking companies. Well, we're the technology making those two marry the best way possible, the most efficient way possible. That's the core business. And then we have an adjacency, which is a fintech business, where we provide factoring, financial solutions altogether, factoring, financing, insurance, and even partnership deals like fuel cards. And so we've created value across the entire user journey of what freight is and supply chain is, whether it's a shipper, a carrier, or the operational team in a warehouse. Like we take care of managing all of those components on behalf of our clients. Our clients are all the names I've just mentioned.
Would it be fair to say, I don't like this kind of analogy just to help people also get it. It's like sort of an Uber of freight aggregation. So you basically take this capacity, you take the demand as well, and you sort of match it and optimize it.
Yeah, the same way. I mean, Uber Freight exists in the US and is a bit more than $18 billion revenue, so it is massive. Here in Australia, for us, it's a $66 billion industry. So it is exactly that. The idea is to understand where all the trucks are at all times and marry exactly with the freight needs of Australia and the Australian businesses.
Super cool. Okay, so 18 billion, is that the goal for you?
I think if we settle with 5% market share in the next 4 years, it would not be too shabby, to be honest.
Fair enough. Pretty cool. And so outside of Australia, just in Australia, what's the vision?
There's really enough in Australia for us to hit and break the couple hundred million EBITDA if we get to that 5-6% market share. So I believe in focus. I don't believe in distraction. I think there's a lot of shiny opportunities that exist in your own market, but also by expanding. We got the fundamentals right, the economics right on our business, right? We are extremely close to profitability, a couple of months, weeks away from profitability. So let's continue to execute. We are creating value in this market. So whenever the team is like, oh, why don't we just spin it off as a software SaaS service that we go in to Southeast Asian market with? It could be great. Let's first grab the market, let's slug the market, let's make sure that we continue to create value to the current users that enjoy our services, and then we'll consider expansion.
Super interesting. Also because I guess a thought that is often heard in Australia is, at least from some investors, you need to be global first. You know, even if markets can support investment thesis. And so, did you face that sort of like not criticism, but I guess like challenge, right? And how did you handle it?
For sure, I handled it by making sure that I have the right investors backing me. There's enough like startups and companies out there so that you can fit the ones that you believe in. There's enough money out there as well so that you can pick and choose the dollar that makes sense to you and the person behind or the fund behind and their vision on your business. So I've always aligned that and make sure that the people backing me back my story and back my ambition while they're trying to pivot the business. To get back to your second question, which is second part of your question, which is how do I get to the idea? I do want to cover that piece because a lot of people wait for an eureka moment. A lot of people before they become an entrepreneur, they say, well, you got to have the best idea. Well, actually, sometimes an average idea with the best execution is good enough. So let's be very clear. So that's not the case. And at least for me, it hasn't been the case. I was extremely fortunate that through the history I've had and the good exit of the business that I've co-owned, I was also on the radar of a couple of funds that invested into HelloFresh. And so I was interacting with one of them and they said, you know what, we love to back second founders and we love to back people that have been successful or had some level of success, right? And they said, okay, now we have no idea in what, but we like you and we want to back you as a founder. Could you come back to us with a vision? And like, oh, interesting concept, right? I'm super fortunate. Life isn't normally that easy. And so I've traveled in Indonesia, I've traveled in New York, and I've traveled all around to say, okay, what do I know? Where sits my skill set? What head start do I have compared to the knowledge I have of an industry? And that came back constantly to supply chain because I had that experience. And so I've looked at the Uber Freights, I looked at the convoys, the senders, and the businesses that exist out there. And I said, okay, let me pick and choose what has been successful for them and also what is relevant to my own market in Australia. Because I'm not getting out of Australia. I love this country. And I want to live here, right? And so I've done exactly that. It took me a couple of months and then I presented and said, okay, this is what I want to do. This is my vision. Now it is my own vision. I've picked and choose what I like, but I've made it my vision. Do you want to continue to invest? Do you still want to give me that €1 million plus? And I said yes. And from there onward.
Super interesting. Sort of like your mental framework was like core strengths, then basically sort of like international scanning of what happened. and then effectively a market and like local market gap analysis. And you say like, okay, following those three things, here I am, and let's make it happen.
Yeah, I first started with Crunchbase and said, okay, what are the top 100 startups that raise the most funds around the world? Because if they're raising funds, they're getting close to market fit. So they are responding to a need. Out of all of those, what already exists in Australia? So what already has some level of competition, which means that you will have to increase your burn in order to truly have a market share or have a dent. And so you're risking that own idea. And I've just by doing that and then matching that with the matrix of my own skill set, it landed specifically on this business.
Super cool. No, I think it's it's a really great matrix or approach for anyone, thinking, what could I do? The implication of that, though, is that you may have worked for a little bit of time, because that area of expertise, whatever it is, you need to, build it, accrue some experience. It just doesn't happen like this. So, but it's a cool implication of what you're saying. You touched on the part of financing, fundraising, which is an interesting one, because I mentioned it at the beginning. You raised a great amount of money, which by any standard is pretty impressive for the amount of time. And you also mentioned something pretty interesting about being very determined and deliberate in who you raise funds from. And I think it's an interesting thought, because many people may think, look, I need to get money. And they even put themselves a little bit into a disparate position, right? It's like, wherever the money comes from, money, it's just survival. And that usually ends up with accepting bad terms, with not being in control of your company anymore, and in fact not even being respected by your partners who don't see a strong person or a strong counterpart in you. How can you help us there and help our audience navigate that topic? Which approach do you take to this? Is it like massive outreach? Is it like being very determined and clear in your communication? Can you help us unpack this?
So first of all, it's a luxury to get to that way of thinking. And at the beginning, when it's a life or death, any dollar is a good dollar. But then as the maturity comes in, the maturity of your business kicks in, then every dollar is not equal. But I'll get to that in a second. For me, the way I've gone about my seed, and they all were very different. My seed funding, and I remember that specifically because I had a tool called DocSoup. And so for a tool called DocSoup, which is a scraping tool from LinkedIn. And so my keywords that you have to look for is partner, investor director, and so on of VC funds. And I had a list, I think at the time was like 10,000 plus of people that I then automatically emailed through this tool, because LinkedIn was not yet blocking those automation. And so I've just mass emailed, and then for all the ones that didn't work, I then emailed with a different way of trying to compute what the email was, whether it's the name of the company, whether it's the initial of the company, and whether it's their first name, dot their last name, or just every single scenario I've mapped out for a tool, and just mass outreach. And whoever was keen to give me money was going to be good enough. No pretension, right? Because you're so early in your business that you just need funds in order to prove your thesis, and you need desperately funds. Right, and when I fundraised, I started in March 2020. There's something called COVID that happened around that time. So the market had completely dried up. So that's how I've done. From seed onward, I've realized something. I've had talked to hundreds and hundreds of funds. There's actually an infinite amount of money in the world. But actually, raising is like dating. Like the VCs that you talk to, they need to deploy the funds. They actually absolutely need to deploy the funds. They are at some level in the same boat as yours. Sometimes they're actually employees. And so they're the same. You're both trying to do the same thing in your own agenda. So let's be super relaxed. Then you're not going to change your life. You're not going to change theirs completely. Let's enjoy the ride. Let's be chill about it. And if it makes sense, let's share the journey. But if it doesn't, let's move on peacefully, and it's okay. And so I've built the confidence to think like that and to tell myself, like, it's fine. There's an infinite amount of money. So I get to choose. I get to choose. They can miss a great companies that they never invested into and still be okay. I can miss great funds and still be okay. And that's now how I think about things.
So you could say you're good at dating as well, but that's another topic.
It is. I mean, I'm married with 3 kids, so
you are really good.
It's a past life, but it does play a role, right? Like funds, they're like managed by humans, and humans react well to capital things, including FOMO, and the fear of missing out sometimes dictates the pace you have in analyzing the data room and whether the company is good investing or just investing altogether. And so playing that well, like saying, oh, things are happening, there's no space for you in this round, you can't invest, will obviously make you want to invest, right? And the same way in dating. If If you like follow me and I'll run away and run away and I'll follow you, and that thesis works.
Desire.
That's a true component.
Yeah, that's a really cool analogy. Really good one. Thanks for sharing the whole part. I think this part, hopefully will resonate with a lot of people of, having two phases, the one where you're trying to make it basically a survival mode, and then you need to add up more of that, basically dating instincts, to call it this way.
Yeah. Dating is to seduce, but then you actually know, you got to know who you want to seduce.
So you need to propose.
You need, at some point you need to propose and lock in with a partner. But yeah, like at the end of the day, like your investors can be your best friend and actually support you in hard times, because it is lonely to be a founder, and especially when you don't have a co-founder like I do, and I don't have a co-founder, so it is lonely. So actually choosing people that are actually going to support, actually pick up the phone when you self-doubt, when you're going through difficult times, it is important, and so you got to choose carefully.
It's a good plan if you do. Do you regret being a solo founder, or you're happy about it?
No, definitely regret. It wasn't my first intention. Okay. I wanted to launch the business with someone, and that person had personal complications, and so left after 2 months. So I was intended to have someone. I think an aspiring partner is super healthy.
Interesting. Well, so if there's anyone looking to partner with looking for one, no, that's over. That's too bad. No, super cool. I think it's a great segue to also, the topic we positioned at the beginning, which is entrepreneurship as a path to financial independence, to freedom in general. You touch a little bit on it, saying like it's a very, solo position. You need to be, dater, like you need to, like say, like it's a lot of psychological, ups and downs going up there. I guess as a statement, would you tend to agree with the views that entrepreneurship could be the path to that independence, or that it's not that straightforward?
I mean, both are true. It's not that straightforward, but it is absolutely the path. I correlate happiness to freedom. And freedom is not having no constraints, it's being able to choose the constraints that you have. And so, of course, there is constraints, right? Because when you're an entrepreneur, like you forego a lot of support. Like you don't have a manager you can rely on. You have no one. You got to be the best boss. You got to be the best founder for your investors. And then, of course, follows at home the best dad, the best husband, the best friend, and all of those things. And everyone expects always a lot from you, and you feel like things never stop. So that is some of the constraint that you got to be ready to accept. You got to be ready to accept that you don't do 9 to 5, and you constantly work all the time. That you have to accept. You have to accept the fact that, of course, you will constantly have a bandwidth of your head that is going to think of work constantly. But if those are things that actually don't cost you that much or even give you energy, then it's the best way to be free, because you control your time, you control what you focus on, you actually choose who you hire, so you choose your culture, you even choose your investors after seed, and so you get then to create your own bubble. That is the reflection of what you've decided and the decisions that you've made. And you don't inherit decisions made by others, you actually control all of those decisions. So yet they will come with constraints that you have to be ready to accept. But if you are, it's the best way to freedom. Not only financial freedom, but just freedom overall.
It's very cool, this definition is at the beginning, freedom being the ability to choose your own constraints. But like then you went on, and what you're saying is quite interesting, right? Because you're saying at the end of the day, it's not for everyone. Saying like there are you're choosing a set of constraints by being an entrepreneur that is predetermined, working a lot, being under constant pressure from different parties. Those things, you don't really set them, they are set for you in that ecosystem or in that role, which is the one of being an entrepreneur. So that being said, would that tend to say that, being an entrepreneur is more of a certain type of personalities? Precisely, you say, the people who can bear this and who excel at, thrive in these circumstances, or different personalities could make it, and you could find some arrangements with what you just described.
I love the fact that you use the word personalities rather than skill set, by the way, because I believe that any skill set and anyone technically could be a founder with the skill set and with their own blind spots. We're all different, and you don't need to be a high energy, high extrovert in order to be a founder. Absolutely not.
That's an interesting one, right? Because that's the mental picture. So exactly. What's behind my question, right? It's like, I need to be this aggressive guy, like wrestling all the time, shouting at people, opening your beans, It's like, okay, no. Really?
No.
You don't look like this, and your beans are clean. I checked. That's all right.
But honestly, everyone can be, but there are a couple of things that are incompressible. in the journey of a founder. You can't get away from. I gave you a couple of examples, but you can't get away from the fact that you won't sleep, the fact that when your company is in trouble, you have the responsibility of hundreds of employees and their livelihood, the fact that they have a mortgage when things are not going well, it's on you. And when things are going well, it's not thanks to you. So it's that, like, there's things like this that will always exist. And that is something that you got to be ready to accept it. So maybe some profiles are more inclined to accept that without a massive trade-off on their well-being. But I don't believe that there's only one type of founder, for sure.
Yeah, you socialize happiness and privatize pain for your job. Okay, but how do you do that? Like what you're describing is interesting. How do you deal with it? Like, and I mean, you're definitely in a quite stressful position. Surely enough, we're portraying something which is rosy, shiny, works well. You raise a lot of money from the outside. It sounds like, wow, I want Geoffroy Henry's life, But surely enough, that comes with a lot of responsibilities, expectations. How do you personally deal with that? How do you make sure you don't implode?
It's a good one, and you got to first of all you got to listen to yourself, right? Because you always act. Sometimes you're going to be at the brink of, whether it's a burnout, imploding, whatever we call it. Overall, I think that if you have passion, it's what helps you to have the most resilience. And resilience is what's going to allow you to overcome any storm you have. I'm naturally extremely resilient because I'm positive. I believe it's all going to be okay. Like, a problem isn't the end. The problem is just what comes before a solution. And so, like, that mentality means that I'm okay. Like, I love risk. I don't mind risk. And so for that reason, whenever I come down while I go back up, and I stand at 2 feet and I give it another go, and I can fail 100 times. I don't mind it. Doesn't poorly reflect on me. But I do believe that, though, if you want to be able to weather massive storms, you got to be passionate. You got to believe in what you do in such a way that nothing can hinder your view. And if that's the case, then you're okay. Even if you're the only captain at sea, you'll still continue, right? So that passion thing is important, because I did at the beginning of our chat talk about that you could just look at crunch space and decide on a vision that isn't truly yours and pick and choose.
Sounded a bit dry.
It was, but if you can't then bring your passion to it and truly then make it your own, then don't even do it, because then it's going to be hard times that only passion can overcome, I believe.
No, that's interesting. So it's one that I heard from other successful founders who basically were sharing a very similar tip, saying like, don't go and do something for the money or for the fame. Like, you will never withstand the obstacles that will come your way, and like, passion is basically the only way. And I think it's maybe I'm always saying, but it's probably also a good one. You pick an idea, and you made that relation with the Crunchbase example. If you just go after something because you think it's gonna be big, like, don't do it. You're better off going after an idea that sounds maybe a bit clunky at the start, but you're really passionate about it, because that you'll make it ultimately.
Yeah, I fully align with that comment, 100%.
Could you share a bit more about Startup War story? We are talking about those difficult moments, one where you're like, oof, that was rough.
I had a couple of rough ones, but the biggest one was actually at the beginning of Ofload, because we've been very lucky, right? The business is about 3 years, less than 4 years, and we've gone through everything we've gone through, right? So we had a lot of successes as well. But at the beginning, when we launched in March 2020, I actually wanted to be global.
Here we go again.
And so, because I didn't know better, right? And so I had hired great ex-consulting McKinsey, and I had hired like some super great people in Indonesia. So I had launched 2 countries at the same time. I had about 8 employees in Indonesia, and I had about the same-ish in Australia. And I wanted to open those 2 markets, because my thesis at the time was, if I have to serve 2 markets, I am actually going to build a core technology that is going to be the most scalable, because I won't make it so relevant for one market, because we'll have to have a core that is fitting those 2 very different markets. And so that will set me to the best way in order to build a tech stack that I can then sell all around the world.
It's like a good consultant idea.
So that was my thesis. And then COVID happened. I didn't raise that much money as a pre-seed, and I had to raise my seed. Everyone was telling me it's going to be the end of the world, because we thought so for a couple of months. Yeah. And so comes around, I think it was May or so, I look at the money I have in the bank, and it's approximately 3 months of runway if I only keep 1 country, and about a month and a half if I keep the 2 countries, and a month and a half is 6 weeks. I was in chat with some funds, but no term sheet, nothing. So I was like, okay, now I have to make a decision. The hardest decision, because I actually genuinely believe that you have a social responsibility when you're a founder, to not consider people dispensable, but to actually take all account, true responsibility of the fact that you can negatively impact their lives as much as you can positively impact their lives. And I had just hired them, and I had just dropped their job. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm not completely stupid, and I'd rather optimize my chances and concentrate then on Australia and make sure that I have 3 months to fund ways. And thank God I did that. So I flew in to Indonesia, sat down with one-on-one, said, I failed you. I've made the wrong decision. I sold you a dream that I can't actually honor. You're now going back to being unemployed in a market that's horrible to find a job at the beginning of COVID. And I failed you. So as a founder, I failed. As a person, I'm also failing you. And those are the reasons why I've done it. And I've just been the most transparent. And that moment was super hard, even emotionally, right? I've shed a couple of tears for sure. Because I was realizing the importance of the decision you need to make when you hire someone. It's not a line item on Excel. And so that made me realize that, and was a slap in my face. And probably the hardest time I had to go through. And then, end of August, we got a term sheet and I fundraised with.
Pretty rough, and pretty rough also the whole situation you described of like being left with 3 months in the option you elected to go with, but still 3 months is pretty much nothing. Exactly. Well, thanks for sharing. I guess getting to the part which is not about entrepreneurship, it's probably a bit linked. It's definitely of importance for us here at Upworth around your investment philosophy. That one is an interesting one because entrepreneurs are making an investment, they're making investments themselves to start with, in an idea, in a team, basically. How do you approach investing as a whole? Like, what is your philosophy? What are your goals when you think about investing?
I mean, also just to say it, right, and not just because you're here, but I love what you're doing. I think there's a gap in the maturity that people think you need to have in order to be an investor. No, each one of us can be an investor. And then sometimes we think that we need to have a certain threshold, right? And I was reading an article in the AF, I think it was like, or people think on average you need to have at least 20,000 in order to consider yourself an investor and to start tracking smartly how you deal with your money. No, you can start at any point. Just enter that ecosystem, enter that world, and there's no better way to do that than have an app that supports you and gives you access to all of the data. So love what you're doing.
Thanks.
I personally have been super lucky, right? So there's a bit of money that has built up progressively to the point where I have to then make sure that it's done the right way. I try to invest in all type of things. On public markets, though, I don't do big tech gambles. I don't see the purpose. So when I invest on public markets, I actually go with high yield. Sometimes unsustainable, things that are not really sustainability friendly. But I just promote high yield because I believe that it's quite interesting to have this constant cash flow happening every year. And if you can invest early enough and you get 10 to 15% yield, that's really great. So I just split my asset allocation across different things. I do invest in startups, actually, in quite a few startups. And every year I try to invest in 4 or 5 startups. It used to be a bit more, and now it's like cash allocation is different. I do believe in investing. I do believe in making sure that you control that as well, that part of your life. And I've always loved doing that.
We respect privacy, of course. We're going to ask you about your numbers, but if you had to give a bit of an asset split, what would it be like? How are you more or less allocated?
I just bought a house with my wife in Sydney, a suburb called Coogee. And so that definitely, because of the real estate market here, represents a good chunk.
Like many people.
Like many people for sure, actually. Despite the dollar values for sure.
That's usually a big split.
Big splits. I do there's still some investment that we have a couple different things like a marina infrastructure or hotel in Jerigong, for example, or just investments like that. But are more real estate infrastructure investment. Then I have, so let's say about a good 70% would be real estate.
Okay.
The rest out of that about 10% or 5 to 10% because I got an allocation for it. That's gonna be startup.
Okay.
And then the rest is going to be public market and infrastructure.
Super interesting. So actually, you're pretty much in the average of the Australian investor, which is 65% on properties.
Okay.
You're at 70. So that equates quite a lot of this profile, of building wealth through properties, which is a well proven recipe, right? Then that 10% that you just spoke about is probably quite novel, not that classic, around startups and high growth stocks and potential, definitely an interesting one. And the remaining 10% you were saying about markets. No, super cool. No, thanks for sharing. And on the startup side, have you found that they bring, like good returns to you, or it's too early to say? Would you say it's something, that has been an interesting part of it?
But I had already two that failed, and not just that succeeded.
Okay.
So if you look at it that way, like you say no, I don't just do it for money.
Yeah.
Like I do it because I love the idea of being part of that journey, and maybe like I'm really passive investor. But I love that being in that ecosystem. I love like mingling with founders, getting to meet founders. I love the idea that maybe if the money I give can make a difference. And I am super fortunate where like I don't need that much money, so it's fine. And then worst case, I tax offset it against the wins I have on different other investments. So it's still okay.
It's really cool. So yeah, no, back to the goal. It's not just only about the money. You have like a sponsor, sort of like support.
I mean, 100%. I do expect a couple of them to have 100x return, and that is the thesis, because I don't mind. Yeah, hopefully for sure. But like I don't mind losing 10. I don't panic. I'm not an investor. I panic. I invest in great founders. I barely look at the business model. And then if it fails, it fails. It happens. I failed with some startups. Yeah. So it does happen. But if you have one bad win, and like because I invest pre-seed only, that means that I just have an opportunity to do 80x. So if I lose 40 investments and I have one like this, I'm still do super great numbers.
Well, it's not. I mean, we're going to be out of time, and it's not to pick up of that talk, but it will be super interesting to understand as well. How do you source, those opportunities, right? Exactly, right. I mean, probably networking, friends, word of mouth. We had a great talk with, Johnny Wilkinson from Equitize last time. Like equity crowdfunding is potentially one to spot those opportunities. But no, super nice. I guess, to close this chat, which has been a great one, and thanks again for your time. But one valuable lesson, one knowledge nugget, so to speak, that you wish you had known before and that you would like to share with our
listeners. There's one thing, I don't know how to say it properly, but we tend to glorify success, or we tend to complexify what it took. And I actually believe that the effort that we should all have as founders is to break that down into smaller pieces where it actually is, well, no, it's not that hard. It's not that hard to fundraise. It's not that hard to network. It's not that hard to actually surround yourself with people that have passion and want to give 100% of themselves. And so a lot of people, the only reason they don't do things is because they believe that the barrier of entry is too high. It's going to be super hard. I need to be mature. I need to be ready. I need to have done all of those things before I'm actually ready. Well, either way, it's going to be a slap in your face. So we learn to trust yourself. Things are not that hard. You can go through them. Trust yourself in doing things, and stop believing that you need to be something different to who you already are in order to be a founder. And so if I always the only thing I always tell anyone that asks is I am not smarter than you are, and nor is the billionaire that you hear of on the AFR or any newspaper that you read. He's not that far more smarter than you are, and you're smarter than he is in a lot of ways. And yes, he's smarter than you are in a lot of different ways. But just align where you're smart with what you do, and then you'll be okay. But we glorify people. We make them much better than they actually are. I'm average.
Humble at least. Oh, good word to finish. Thanks, Geoffroy. It was really cool conversation. Hopefully, conversation that our listeners will enjoy. Thanks for the time. I know you're busy, and super cool to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.